of CPLA, and today we are blessed with Dr. Rich Cornell, who is going to be speaking to us about an author that I imagine many of you are here because you enjoy the works of J.R. Tolkien. And Dr. Cornell and I very early on hit it off when I came to university because we're both fans and scholars of Tolkien's works. And you also know that, as Dr. Cornell just said, he embraces his geekiness. You saw, I'm going to say Godzilla, and that's wrong. So correct me. Okay. One thing you'll learn about Dr. Cornell early on is that he enjoys life and he enjoys literature, which may seem strange because he's a professor of theology. Sorry. But I hope that you will have the opportunity not only to have him in class, but also to sit down and read some J.R.R. Tolkien with him. And so, without further ado, Dr. Cornell.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you to Jack and the committee for allowing me to be here and present on something that I enjoy a lot and have a lot of fun with. What I'll be doing, I have some PowerPoints up here. The nature of my talk, I'm not giving kind of a formal, I have a paper in front of me kind of talk. It's more some slides. It's going to be more, we'll chase different rabbits, as they say. And I hope to stir up some things that maybe we'll have time to talk about. It's really my intention to leave plenty of time to talk about some of these issues. This is actually, I think, the third time I've spoken on this topic, but I still feel like I'm just grasping at it. There's still things that I'm trying to figure out, so I very much look forward to your feedback and learning from you. So I want to share some things with you. Yeah, you see my title here, Heavenly Hierarchy, question mark. I think the question mark is important for reasons that we'll talk about. The subtitle, which I owe actually to someone I've learned a lot from, Ralph Wood, who I believe was Dr. Moore's supervisor at Baylor, yes, I believe so. Dr. Ralph Wood at Baylor kind of has my dream job, I guess, in a way. He's a professor of theology and literature. Oh, that sounds sweet. Dr. Ralph Wood wrote a very good book called The Gospel According to Tolkien. And a lot of these themes I owe to him. The very title, Redemptive, connected with hierarchy, I owe to him. So I have many debts, and I'll try to pay some of them right from the get-go. Heavenly hierarchy, question mark, the redemptive nature of hierarchy in Tolkien's Middle-earth. I come to this topic because when I read Tolkien, and I do that frequently, I find that his world's a very hierarchical world. It's a highly stratified kind of world. It's a hierarchy. It's hierarchical through and through. But the word hierarchy is an interesting word, and the denotations of that and the connotations of that for us, given our particular setting, I think are interesting. So let me just throw this back to you right from the get-go. What is a hierarchy? Can you give me a definition? That's the denotation part. But then I'm almost more interested in the connotations, right? And you know what that is. What kinds of things does that word bring into your mind? What does it connote? So, definition, hierarchy. What's a hierarchy?
Sounds British to me.
Sounds British, it's very British. Aye, laddie.
It's sort of a ranking.
A ranking, yes.
Either levels of authority or power.
Actually, three words that are really helpful. Ranking, authority, power. Those three words are pretty helpful, right? A ranking of people, a ranking of things, a ranking of the whole of the created existence. Yeah, good. What else on the definition? And we're going to come to the connotation here in a minute. Yes, ma'am.
I tend to think of like nobility, like how they have like all different ranks.
Yeah, nobility. So when we think of a king, a monarch, those are words that kind of hang out with hierarchy, or perhaps are embodiments of them. Yeah, that's a good point maybe to segue to connotations. When you hear hierarchy, what do you think? And let me ask this question, a sort of evaluative question. Good word, bad word. Why? Connotations, things that hierarchy brings to mind. Not definitions, but how it makes you feel. Yes, ma'am.
I suppose going back to the British idea of sort of classism.
Classism, right? The different classes. Some classes are over other classes. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Yes, ma'am.
I would say it's bad because it's kind of antiquated in a way.
Okay.
Especially in
Given our context here, what's America built on? What are America's central virtues? What's built into the Constitution and the Declaration? What are we about as Americans? Equality, level playing field, no one's above anyone else. Let me share a quick quote here based upon that idea. In a very good book I commend to you called On the Shoulders of Hobbits, The Road to Virtue with Tolkien and Lewis. So if you're a Tolkien or Lewis fan, this will scratch both of those itches. By Louis Marcos. He says this, he starts by quoting Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. Right? No one gets to be called king or something like that. And no person holding any authority or profit or trust under them shall, without consent of the Congress, accept any present, emolument, office, or title of whatever kind from any king, prince, or foreign state. We're not about titles, right? It's a level playing field. Everyone's equal, right? Egalitarianism, those are kind of our central virtues. And when you throw in their freedom and the ways that hierarchy could impose upon my freedom, if someone's over me, might they curb my freedom? Might they tell me what I can and can't do? So, negative connotations there? Yeah. There were other hands over here? Okay. Someone else, connotations with hierarchy. Yes.
I have a thing, you said like the level playing field,
Mm.
but still built into the Constitution, there is hierarchy. The president, the authority of the various courts.
Yes, yeah. There's actually more built in there than most of us probably realize. And if you go back, especially study the Senate and the way it was originally set up, it was more hierarchical than what it's become, right? So even there, we need to go back and look at our documents a little more closely, perhaps. Yeah. But I think we've gotten there with the sense of what it is. A hierarchy, here are a few dictionary definitions: a system in which people or things are placed in a series of levels with different importance or status. A body, this is from the OED, which is appropriate since Tolkien worked on the OED. A body of persons or things ranked in grades, orders, or classes, one above another. And again, for most Americans, I think there tend to be negative connotations attached with that for the reasons that we've already talked about. It tends to be a bad thing. The word, when you break it apart into into the two bits it's made of, actually it's interesting because this word higher comes from a word that means holy or sacred. The ark comes from a word that means rule. So literally, historically, etymologically, it means rule of the sacred or rule of the holy. It's got some interesting kind of religious connotations even in the word itself. But it seems to me that probably most of us grow up thinking it's a bad thing. That sets the stage for what I want to talk about in Tolkien, because what I see in Tolkien's work is a very hierarchical world. And are there bad hierarchies? Yeah. How about the one that Sauron heads up in the trilogy? Or if you've read the Silmarillion, and if you haven't, you should, because it's the best stuff. What about the one headed by Melkor, the ultimate baddie that Sauron used to work for? Are those examples of bad, oppressive, awful hierarchies, the kind of things that we assume they always entail? Yeah. But that's not that interesting, frankly. What is interesting about Tolkien's work is he presents portraits of good hierarchies that aren't just good in the sense of, well, that's how the world is and we're kind of making the best of it. But actually the hierarchy itself tends to be, my favorite word to use is ennobling. Being in these positions and ranks actually ennobles, lifts up people up and down the chain. That his world is hierarchical is clear from anyone who's read it. You can actually lay out every single being on this massive scale, what some people call, Ralph Wood calls, a great chain of being. I think he's taken that phrase from some older folks who've written big books about that. But this great chain of being, it starts at the top. It starts with the God figure in Tolkien's legendarium. His whole work, the trilogy and everything else, is often called the legendarium, the whole, everything he put together. Eru, or Iluvatar, is the God figure. And he is overall. He is the eternal one. He is the one from whom all things come. Now, underneath Eru or Iluvatar are characters that we first meet as the Ainur. They're portrayed as the thoughts of his mind that become external to him. We might think of them as angels, might be the best we can do with them. Sometimes they're almost considered as gods, but they're really not gods because they came into being. They derive from Iluvatar. They're called the Ainur, and those Ainur who choose to come down and get involved in our world, or at least Middle Earth's world, don't want to confuse reality there too much, are called the Valar, the powers. Yeah, I won't go there. Underneath the Valar are these other kind of lesser angels in a way, the Maiar, who are underneath them. Our good friend, we may not know this if we've only read the trilogy, but our very good friend Gandalf actually had a prior existence. He is a Maya, that's a singular of Maiar. Back in his earlier days, he had a different name, Elorian, and he's one of these kind of lower angels, who then shows up later as a wizard, which is pretty handy. So, Eru, God, the high angels, the Valar, the Maiar, underneath them, the elves, who are called the firstborn. They are higher up than the followers, the secondborn, humans. Hobbits, what are hobbits? Well, they're we humans, I guess, right? They're smaller, they're closer to the ground. They would probably be classified here. Where to put the dwarves is always an interesting question. Maybe they go on this same line here, maybe they go below it. But then animals are below that, and on down to gems and minerals and things like that. So it's hierarchical from top to bottom, but even within certain divisions, it's very hierarchical. It's a hierarchy within a hierarchy. There are certain elves that are higher, nobler than other elves. Elves who've got to cross where they spend most of their time and visit with these Valar and hang out with the angels. They're called the higher elves, or the light elves, the elves who have seen the light of the blessed land. They're higher, nobler, greater, physically, mentally, and otherwise than those elves who have not. Even among men, Aragorn is greater. He's from a line of men called the Númenóreans that are far superior to many other men. Even at the level of animals. Who's the greatest animal in Tolkien's work? Who's at the top of this level? Shadowfax. And then you've got Bill. Who's Bill? Bill the pony, right? So Shadowfax to Bill. So hierarchies within hierarchies. It's hierarchical to the nth degree. I think that's so patently obvious we don't need to belabor it. Now, what's interesting, though, is then how Tolkien paints the pictures of these hierarchies. And right from the beginning, right from his creation myth, the story of how the world came into being, you get a beautiful and wonderful contrast of the two kinds of hierarchies, bad stuff, the bad one, and the good one. What this is coming from, in Tolkien's work, the Silmarillion, which is the backstory for the trilogy. If you've read the trilogy, the Silmarillion is the backstory. It's the mythical beginnings of the world kind of story. It was never published during his life. It was the love of Tolkien's life. It's what he worked on first. It was what he was working on at his death, and he never quite could get it where he wanted it. And every time he farmed it out to a publisher, they said, I don't think anyone will read this. It's rather dense. My students who are in the Tolkien class right now, like, how many names does everyone have? Every person has 57 names. It's dense that way. It's biblical in its tone, right? It's a tough read, but for my money, it's the richest stuff. It's certainly the most theological. So what I'm referring to here is in the Silmarillion, this backstory, the first bit of that is called the Ainulindale, the Song of the Ainur, those angels we mentioned that were on the second level. And what this story recounts is how the world came into being. God, Eru, Iluvatar, brings these thoughts, these Ainur, into being. And he is going to create through them. He propounds this great theme. There's a song that they're going to sing. And this song is actually like the blueprint of the created world that is to be. But what he does, he invites these angels who are under him to join in that project. He gives them the theme, But he lets them join and bring their own voices and their own creativity and to express themselves in this theme. And this theme will eventually be the created world. He invites them into the creative endeavor. He is the ultimate creator, but he invites them to create with them. He gives them the theme. There's this wonderful language. He says, here's the theme. Why don't you guys improv? It's like jazz, right? Do your own thing there and put your own stamp on it. This song that will be creation will bear your very fingerprints. It's this gracious, open kind of position that the God of this world takes. And he even says, Iluvatar, God says, I will sit back and hearken and be glad that through you great beauty has been wakened into song. Now, Iluvatar is God and the Ainur, these angels, are not. That's really clear. But how he holds his authority, even something as important as creation, he invites them to participate with him in that. He doesn't guard his authority tightly. I'm the creator here, you go off and do something. Daddy's got work to do here. He invites them to join into that. It's this beautiful picture of how a ruler, how a God in this case, should be. In the midst of this story, we get what we could call our Satan figure, Melkor. See if this sounds familiar. Of all the angels, he was the most gifted, most bright, most powerful. He's the best looking. Ringing any bells here? Yeah, probably. Well, Melkor, like everyone else, was invited to join in this creative role, and he does, but he begins to do some different things. We begin to hear that he's not just doing his own thing. He's invited to do his own thing. Eru is gracious. He invites you to kind of put your stamp on this creative project. We read, it came into the heart of Melkor to interweave matters of his own imagining that were not in accord with the theme of Iluvatar, God. For he sought, and here's the kicker, he sought therein to increase the power and the glory of the part assigned to himself. Hear what's happening there? Iluvatar has invited people to make this song their own, but he's doing this. Seeking to, up his part and make his part even more prominent. We read a few pages later, but he, Melkor, rather desired to subdue to his will both elves and men, because what happens in this song? Eventually elves and men will be sung about and then will eventually come into being. He knows they're coming, elves and men. What kind of relationship does Melkor want to have with them? He desired to subdue to his will both elves and men, envying the gifts which Iluvatar promised to endow them. And he wished himself to have subjects and servants and to be called Lord and Master over other wills. He has a will to power. For our Nietzsche fans out there. He has this desire to dominate, to control. So right from the beginning, we get kind of two pictures of someone who is at the top of the hierarchy. Eru is at the top of everything. Generous with his power, generous with something as important as creation. Melkor, the mightiest of the Ainur, wanting to control and dominate those both in his level and those below his level. This contrast between good hierarchy and bad hierarchy is built in right at the beginning. Two portraits. I think in some ways, we can come down the chain a little bit if we go back and look at the chain of being. It's more interesting in a way as we come down the chain. Let's talk about wizards. We might be more familiar with these people. Anyway, let's talk about good old Gandalf and Saruman. Two wizards. Now, what do we know about them? Is there kind of a pecking order even there? Is there rank even at that level? What's the rank there? Is one of them higher than the other? Saruman and Gandalf? Yes.
Saruman.
Saruman is the white. Gandalf starts off as the gray. Right? And then the story, if you've seen the movies or read the books, Gandalf is actually going to go to seek help from his superior. Gandalf views him as such. But it's very interesting to look at how these two interact with each other, but also interact with people who are down the chain from them. And who's down the chain from them? Elves, men, dwarves, hobbits. Saruman demeans Gandalf for hanging out with hobbits. Right? What are you doing hanging out with them? Here you go, the ring was in Hobbiton the whole time, you didn't even notice, and the reason you didn't notice is you've been hanging out with lesser people and they diminished you. You're above them. You're smoking too much of their pipe weed, they're making you dumb, you're hanging out in bad company, corrupts good morals. This is Saruman's kind of thinking. He thinks Gandalf is physically diminished and spiritually diminished by hanging out. Not just hanging out, enjoying people below his status. Saruman even disses people in his own status. There's another wizard we don't know much about, except the movies have filled it in. Radagast, man, got bird poop in his hair. What's Saruman think about Radagast? What an idiot. What a moron. The movies kind of help that assessment in some ways. But Sauron looks down upon him because he's just out playing with birds and nurturing human creation. Saruman despises those who are below him. And when he's trying to seduce Gandalf over to the dark side, how does he do that? He goes, you know what, Gandalf, here's the deal. You and I, let's talk. Come here, friend. We're wizards. We're good. And we could get a lot of good done. We could bring order and peace to this world if we just leave off with these other people that are below us. If we put our two heads together, we could get some things done. These friends of ours, friends in quote for Saruman, who are below us, bless their hearts. Now, if you ever lived in the South, you know, if you hear bless their hearts, the next thing coming is they're so stupid. Bless their hearts, those little friends below us, elves, men, bless their hearts. We've just been hindered by them. They've been in the way. Think how much more we could get done if we, the important people, team up. He despises those below his station. Wouldn't think of trusting in them. What about Gandalf? What does Gandalf do? What is the basic plot line of the trilogy? Just think about what Gandalf does. What does he do with the ring? He doesn't take it himself, refuses that. What's he do with it?
Gives it to Frodo.
Puts it in the hands of a hobbit. I mean, that's going down a few levels, yeah? Not only does he hang out with them, trust them, loves them, he places his faith implicitly in them. And then who does he send with Frodo? Sam, the bumblingest hobbit of the mix, right? This is your plan. You're going to not only, it's not just you like these people, you're going to entrust them with the most important task. You couldn't see a more starker contrast. Saruman despises those below him, would not think of trusting them. Gandalf implicitly trusts them. A famous scene in the movie and a very long chapter in the book is the Council of Elrond. When the ring finally makes its way to Rivendell, they're deciding what to do with this thing. And everyone's weighing in on this. At one point, Elrond, who's master of this elvish city, says this statement, which I think is very important. This quest to get rid of the ring may be attempted, now listen to the words I've underlined, by the weak with as much hope as the strong. Yet such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere. Now it's interesting that he uses hierarchical language. He says there are weak people and there are strong people. But he's saying actually sometimes the most important things get done by those who are the weak. There's an acknowledgement of the hierarchy, but there's an implicit trust in those who are, quote, below. The line from the movie. I don't believe this is in the book. I've looked for it and not found it. You folks who know better can help me with this. But Galadriel, the movie, kind of nails this point. Even the smallest person can change the course of the future. And that's exactly what happens. So two wizards who both acknowledge this hierarchy, even the elves, but feel very differently about it. It's in the character of Aragorn where I think Tolkien gives one of his best portraits of what it looks like to be a good king or a good ruler. Someone who knows his station and knows it's a high station, but lives in such a way that those who are under him are ennobled by his rule, not suppressed by it. It's striking to me the difference between what I call movie Aragorn and book Aragorn. And I think the changes that Peter Jackson made are very interesting, and I think they're changes because Peter Jackson knows his audience. He knows his primary audience are Westerners and Americans who value what we said before, level playing field, everybody on the same, no one's above anyone. He downplays significantly Aragorn's confidence and understanding and knowledge of who he is. Aragorn knows he's king. And there are many moments where he acts in kingly fashion. One of the starkest contrasts, if you go back to the movie and watch the scene where Aragorn and his two friends, Gimli and Legolas, are out running across the fields of Rohan. And Éowyn and his horse battalion surround them, and it's looking a little tense, and Gimli the dwarf kind of smarts off and about loses his head because of it. If you go back and watch that scene in the movie, what you'll see is an Aragorn who says, let's calm down here, guys. We're all buddies here. I'm Aragorn. This is Gimli. He's not as bad as he looks. This is Legolas. Let's be buddies. That's kind of how the scene goes. Let me read you how it goes in the book. See if you can feel the difference. So Aragorn, who's king, is being questioned by this other man, this man from Rohan. At one point, we read, Aragorn threw back his cloak. The elven sheath glittered as he grasped it, and the bright blade of Anduril, the sword, by the way, that's another important difference. He has the sword already. The sword tells him who he is. He knows who he is. He knows his destiny. He already has it. We're not waiting later to get it forged. Cool scene in the movie, very different point. So he throws back his cloak, the elven sheath glittered as he grasped it, and the bright blade of Anduril shone like a sudden flame as he swept it out. Elendil, he cried, I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and I am called Elisar, the Elfstone, Dunedain, the heir of Isildur, Elendil, son of Gondor. Here is the sword that was broken and is forged again. Will you aid me or thwart me? Choose swiftly. No wallflower is he. He knows exactly who he is. He's pulling rank. I'm Aragorn. And Éowyn gets it. So did Gimli and Legolas. Gimli and Legolas looked at their companion in amazement, for they had not seen him in this mood before. He seemed to have grown in stature while Éomer had shrunk. And in his living face they caught a brief vision of the power and the majesty of the kings of stone. For a moment it seemed to the eyes of Legolas that a white flame flickered on the brows of Aragorn like a shining crown. Éomer, the one who just challenged him, stepped back with a look of awe on his face. That's a completely different portrayal because Tolkien gets it. Aragorn is the king and he will be kingly. Jackson's a little afraid of that, I think. Because he's not sure that we're okay with that. We're not sure what we think about kings. We like to read about them in the Inquirer, but we're not sure we want one ruling over us, right? I think that there's a very intentional shift that happens there throughout the movie because he knows we're skittish about authority. He knows that hierarchy is not always a great thing for us. I need to move quickly here, some things I'll leave out. Aragorn is both a man of authority, but he's a man under authority too. He willingly submits to the leadership of Gandalf. Gandalf is his superior. He has no problem submitting to him. Who leads the Fellowship of the Nine? Gandalf. Gandalf falls. Who takes over? Aragorn, right? There's a ranking amongst the nine even that they function within. But Aragorn is the kind of king that if you had, you'd feel differently about kingship. He's the kind of king that when he discovers some hobbits, he says to them, again claiming who he is, I am Aragorn, and if by my life or my death I can save you, I will. A king that will go to that degree for a hobbit? Now, okay, the hobbits, they got the ring. It's kind of an important deal, so okay, that makes sense. What about later on, at the end of the first movie of the book, when Aragorn has to make a terrible choice? Frodo and the ring and Sam have gone one way. The two other hobbits, what's happened to them? Captured by orcs. What to do? He wrestles with the decision. What's he decide? He ends up saying, the fate of the bearer of the ring, Frodo, is not in my hands. Though he's king, though he is in a position of authority, he knows that there are powers above him even. And not just Gandalf. There are other powers at work, and he implicitly trusts in them. But he knows what he can do. He is the kind of king that with two companions will pursue a massive orc pack to rescue two kind of silly hobbits. That's what a king does. Puts his life on the line for two other foolish little lads. Save them. It's a good model of kingship. I don't have time to read the passage, but there's a beautiful passage near the end of the book, in the third book, after they've won the first big battle, the Battle of Pelennor Fields. But yet they know that Frodo's still trying to get the ring to Mount Doom, and now all the orcs have retreated and are between Frodo and where he needs to get. And Gandalf says, hey, let's march on the Black Gate. And they march on the Black Gate knowing that the only thing they're trying to accomplish is to distract Sauron's gaze so Frodo can do what he has to do. As they're marching there, this is not in the movie, some of the men who were marching with them get deep into the enemy land, and the text says they became unmanned. They were so afraid, so fearful of the imminent death that was before them, that they just come unglued. They can't go any farther. Technically, they've committed what? Mutiny. What do you do to people who are mutinous? Well, what you're entitled to do is you can't have people who won't fight. Even a good king might be in his right to say, well, guys, sorry, there's your choice. Listen to what Aragorn does. I said I wasn't going to read it, but it's too good. We got to read it. Aragorn looked at them, these men who are just unglued. They're scared out of their wits. He looked at them, and there was pity in his eyes rather than wrath. For these were young men from Rohan, from the Westfold far away, or husbandmen from Losnarok, and to them Mordor had been from childhood a name of evil, and yet unreal, a legend that had no part in their simple life. And now they walked like men in a hideous dream made true, and they understood not this war, nor why fate should lead them to such a pass. Here's what he says. Go. Keep what honor you may, and do not run. And there's a task which you may attempt, and so be not wholly shamed. Take your way southwest till you come to Caer Andros, and if that is still held by the enemies, as I think, then retake it if you can, and hold it to the last defense of Gondor and Rohan. Then some, having heard this, being shamed by his mercy, overcame their fear and went on. And others took new hope, hearing of a manful deed within their measure that they could turn to, and they departed. Something really important just happened there. Aragorn's king. It's his decision. He's leading this group. It's in his right to do away with these mutinous people. But what do good kings do? They ennoble those below them. He doesn't say, oh, well, shucks, guys, I guess, you don't want to go. It's kind of scary. I get that. He's the king. He says, go. But what does he tell them to do? He gives them a task that's within their doing, that's within their capability. He gives them something that they can do. He lifts them up even as they're falling. That's what a good king does. He makes those below him the best them they can be. Frodo and Sam might be the most interesting thing of all. What's their relationship? Now again, the movie downplays it a bit. Sam is Frodo's servant. Pippin and Merry don't call him Mr. Frodo. Pippin and Merry are his social equals. Even within the realm of Hobbit, right? You got Frodo and Merry and Pippin, they're all on the same level. Sam is a level below in his education, in his upbringing, in his very family line. Sam's dad served Bilbo before. Servant and master is the relationship. You read the text, you can't miss it. It's all over. My master, my master, my master. But the beautiful thing about this relationship is that they are both ennobled by it. Sam is lifted up by Frodo. Sam, he hasn't been out of the Shire, he's kind of suspicious of people, he doesn't have much experience. Frodo broadens Sam's world and Sam's horizons. In some ways, teaches Sam mercy. He lifts up Sam in that way. And if you've seen the movie, you know that Sam lifts up Frodo literally. This whole quest wouldn't even make it if Sam is not there. The servant ends up carrying the master, and that's why the whole thing gets resolved. But this relationship succeeds as it does precisely because they're maintaining the servant-master relationship. It's interesting, the one time when Sam gets the ring, because Frodo's had a bad day. He's been stung by Shelob, and he's kind of cocooned and been carried away. Sam takes the ring for safekeeping. How does the ring tempt Sam? And you don't get this in the movie. Am I convincing you to read the book if you haven't read the movie? How does the ring try to get at Sam? Already the ring tempted him. He's got to figure out how to rescue Frodo. Already the ring had tempted him, gnawing at his will and reason. Wild fantasies arose in his mind. He saw Samwise the Strong. This is the vision the ring's putting in his head. Wild fantasies arose in his mind. Samwise the Strong, hero of the age, striding with a flaming sword across a darkened land, the armies flocking to his call as he marched to overthrow Barad-dûr. And then all the clouds rolled away, and the white sun shone, and at his command the vale of Gorgoroth became a garden of flowers, and trees brought forth fruit. He had only to put on the ring and the chain in it for his own, and all this could be. Can I put it this way? The ring is tempting him to be Aragorn. Especially that first bit, right? Sword, flaming, people coming behind. The ring's tempting him to be the king. Climb the ladder, brother. It's been a tough go at it, right? You've been having a hard time. Why not? The ring could make you go from here to here. That'd be kind of swell. Listen to how he resists. In that hour of trial, it was love of his master that helped most to hold him firm. But also deep down in him lives still unconquered his plain hobbit sense. He knew in the core of his heart that he was not large enough to bear such a burden, even if such visions were not a mere cheat to betray him. The one small garden of a free gardener was all his need and due, not a garden swollen to a realm, his own hands to use, not the hands of others to command. The ring tempts him to be Aragorn, and he resists it by remembering his place. He is servant by Frodo. And as the lowest person, if I went back to that hierarchy, as almost the lowest person on it, who is the primary hero in most scholars' minds of the trilogy? Sam. The lowest guy on the totem pole ends up being, in a way, the biggest hero, but he's precisely that hero, not by climbing the ladder, but by knowing his place and maintaining it in the hierarchy. It's kind of a radical thought, I think. You could contrast Saruman and Grima. There's a servant-master relationship. Well, that doesn't end up too well, to say the least. One shoving a knife in the other. Didn't end up very good. So, good hierarchy, and I promise I'm going to leave some time so they try to wind it quickly. In Tolkien's world, you should see certain characteristics about bad hierarchies and good hierarchies. What do bad hierarchies do? They have this will to dominate. They want to control and dominate those below them. They despise them or use those below them for their own purpose. They seek to subdue. They trade on fear. No one loves Sauron. They don't serve him because they love him. They serve him because they fear him. That same passage I just read about Sam being deep into Mordor, he gets in there and looks at the defenses, and he has this chilling realization. These defenses weren't made to keep people out of Mordor. They were made to keep people in. Because if you're down the ladder from Sauron, you're not staying there because you love him. You're staying there because he'll squash you like a bug if you don't. Right? It's a different feel. They enforce servitude, and they are ultimately self-destructive, destroying of others, and ultimately self-destructive. See, no, Sauron, orcs. What do good hierarchies look like? They desire the flourishing, the ennobling of those above and below. They value, protect, and most remarkably, back to Gandalf, they trust those whose station is lower than theirs. Implicitly trust them. Remember, the small hands will get things done. Love and respect. Willing submission. Frodo's not holding a gun to Sam's head. Not that they had guns. Right. Willing submission to authority and a very self-sacrificial nature. Now, where Tolkien gets his view of hierarchy, where does this come from? Well, he's a medievalist. And if the medieval period was anything, it's hierarchical. So it's an occupational hazard of being a medievalist, right? Well, that's what it was about. Feudalism, of course, that's in his blood, so that's where he gets it from. Oh, yeah, maybe. What about politically? He's a royalist. Okay, fine, so his politics come into play. But I wonder, is his Christian faith at root in some sense too? Is some of this hierarchical thing faith-based? In the sense of heaven's not a democracy, it's a sort of hierarchy of sort. And I think one of the interesting passages, and it's often a passage that people talk about to try to make a very egalitarian point, but I think it completely misses the point. The foot washing. Jesus is going to get down and what? Take on the role of a servant and do this nasty task of washing people's feet. The most low task. But listen to how he says this. You call me teacher and Lord. Let me rewrite the script for a second. And all shucks, guys. I'm just one of y'all. Yeah, it's a level playing field here, right? You call me teacher and Lord? Let's just leave off with that stuff. We're all friends here, right? No. You call me teacher, Lord? Yep. That's right. I'm the teacher. You're the student. I'm the Lord. You're the servant. For so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, and you also have to wash one of those feet, I have given you example. Truly I say to you, and he uses the language. A servant is not greater than his master. It's Jesus precisely knowing who he is in his authority, in his rank above, that does this task. He begins to redefine. He doesn't undo authority and rank. He begins to significantly redefine it. Paul all the time uses the language of servant or slave. Paul is a servant or a slave to his master and submissive to other authorities. So is some of this in Tolkien, is some of it his medieval emphasis, his politics, or some of it Christian? In his very famous essay on fairy stories, he near the end of it, he puts it this way. In God's kingdom, the presence of the greatest does not depress the small. If this is true, are there other virtues that are our favorite ones that might actually be virtues? Humility, service, deference, and submission? Tolkien has a famous quote about the squire. That's profanity, and I guess maybe I should change it. It might be a bad thing to tip your hat to the squire. A squire being someone who's, in this sense, someone who's over you, a higher station than you, again, in England. It might be a bad thing to tip your hat to him, to acknowledge his station. But it's blank good for you. Might be a blank bad thing to tip your hat to him. I mean, he might take that wrong. He might get the big head. But it's darn good for you. What's he saying there? But actually realizing that we are under authority can be a good thing, because ultimately we are under authority. At least the authority of God, if not authority in other ways. And maybe we find our place. Maybe we become the best self that we can be, not by forcing the playing field to be level, but realizing what place we occupy in that. It's a very different way of thinking. Now, I've got some concerns, and I'm going to try to shut up here in a second. We might say, that's all well and good. This is a lovely story. Aragorn's such a great dude. If he was king, I would so sign up to be in his kingdom. But this is a story, right? And we live in the real world, and reality is a bit different. And we know power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And don't we just have to read the history books to realize It doesn't really work well. Maybe God can be a good ruler, but most human rulers are going to muck it up and become oppressive and tyrannical. Almost all hierarchies that we see, aren't they of the bad sort in the real world? Maybe only God can pull off having that kind of authority, status, and power. One thing I forgot, Lord, my wife and I were talking last night, and I was telling her, wait, I think I might be a little hypocritical in this stance. I was saying, the way we view our marriage, we look at that as equals. We have an egalitarian view of marriage, right? I'm not the head of her. We're partners in this. I used to have a different view. And I used to have a different view because I saw the Bible saying that. And stuff Paul says about husband being the head of the wife and all that. My best friend from college, his name's Matt Harmon. He teaches at Grace University. His wife is Kate. Lovely couple. Some of the most devout people I know. If I brought Kate in here and asked her to explain her relationship with her husband, here's what she'd say. He is my spiritual head. And I love him and he loves me implicitly. And I actually find myself being all the woman that God wants me to be because of this relationship that we have. He brings out the best in me. Now, I used to be there. I'm not there now. Maybe I'm a hypocrite for not being. But that was a real concrete example. At least, now she might be wrong, but that's her experience of that headship, that hierarchy in the home. That we're Wesleyans. We don't go there, right? But it was a powerful point for me. At least taking her at her own words of an illustration of that. She's serious about that. She means that very intently. So. With that, I won't do Loki Captain America. That's for another time. Actually, watch that scene in the Avengers and ask yourself this: who's right, Loki or Captain America? That's another thing. Questions or comments? Do we have some time, Jack? Or we have time?
We take a few questions.
Take a few questions.
You don't have a mic, so just raise your hand.
Oh, come on. That didn't raise any questions in that last bit. Yeah.
Can we be part of more than one hierarchy, or is there only one hierarchy in life?
Well, I think in some ways, of course, we're a part of many hierarchies, but I think the way Tolkien understands it, they all eventually, there's one big master one, and there are subsets that we're a part of. So I'm under a kind of authority, a governmental kind of authority, right? Like my governor or the president or something, but within my family it's different. But all those you can end up mapping on a big flow chart if you had to. So yes and no.
Is there other ways for me to be higher in one hierarchy than one person, but lower than that same person in a different hierarchy?
Yeah, I think potentially, yeah. I think part of what Ralph Wood will say about hierarchies is they're not inflexible. They're not completely, it's not that things don't move and shift up and down, that they do. So I think it probably is possible that in different circumstances, you could be over someone, and where in another circumstance you might be, quote, under them, using those words carefully.
What do you think the tensions would lies in desiring to do the best where you are in your sort of hierarchy, as opposed to ambition, which I think socially would sort of say, like, go to the next rung up?
Yeah. Well, that's where I wonder, because ambition.
Question, Rich? Can you repeat the question?
Yes. The question was, if we buy this whole hierarchical thing, what do we do with ambition? Because, especially in our culture, ambition is thought of as a good thing, doing the best with what you have and trying to achieve more and be more. And this is at the heart of the American dream. What's the American dream? Anyone can be president. Anyone can be an astronaut. So that's one of our deep ideals. And I think there's a part of that that's good, that teaches us to be all that we can be. Can I be blunt? There's a part of that that's just false. Can anyone be president? Honestly. No. And you can list about 300 reasons why. In as much as that calls forth the best from us, to be the best one that we can be, so far so good. But there's a sense in which I could never and will never be president. And there's a kind of striving that might actually be detrimental to my spiritual and well-being otherwise, because because that's not my calling, that's not my station. And yeah, I'll stop there before I get in more trouble. Yes, sir.
You keep talking about stations
Yeah.
and different levels.
Yeah.
Now, what about the value level of each level?
Thank you. Very important question. I think that the real Christian piece here is that the worth and value, especially worth and value understood in its most important way in God's eyes, that's where really the ground is level. That at the level of value and worth, we're all the same. Why does Aragorn go try to rescue two hobbits? I mean, if you want to do a cost-benefit analysis, that's a crummy decision. Because he's going to risk his very important neck for their very silly necks. But part of why he does that is a realization of their intrinsic value. But after he rescues them, he's not going to make Pippin king of Gondor. That would not work out well. Sam is the hero of the book. I'll say it. He has no business being king of Gondor. That would be a very bad idea. And he'd be the first to say it. So yes, the question of work, that's a different kind of consideration, I think. And you're right, if we don't pair those, we get in all kinds of messes. So thank you for bringing that up. Roger?
I don't know if I could have run the risk of overgeneralizing.
Sure.
But
I've done it, so go ahead.
Our American ongoing struggle with redefining rights as
Yeah.
far as who gets what.
Yeah.
Is that more or less, whether it's slavery or other racial or gender things, an attempt to redefine hierarchy? Who has the power?
Right. Gosh. Are we out of time yet?
Why not next week? Right?
What is next week? I'm not answering your question. I'll confess it up front. I think I come back to these notions of freedom. And freedom is like maybe the ultimate good in a way. The American dream, the ultimate virtue is freedom. And in some striking way, I think Christianity ends up teaching the more you become in the image of Christ, the less freedom you have. Freedom in the terms of raw autonomy to do whatever I want. That actually Paul's portrait, his whole stuff with being a slave and servant is my choices are being reduced, but the choices that are being reduced are those bad choices that are destructive to me and to others. Those choices to destroy myself are removed as I'm more and more shaped into the image of Christ. And if we redefine freedom in that way and then put rights underneath that kind of notion of freedom, we get a different picture. And we can combat evils like slavery with that kind of understanding of freedom, rights in place, but avoid some of the excesses of a freedom, of the bad kind of freedom, that the freedom it's like Burger King. You have it your way. Who are you to tell me what to do? Kind of, I guess, million John Stuart Mill freedom. You can't tell me what to do, and society shouldn't impose on me what to do. Checking that kind of freedom, but instilling a different kind of freedom that actually will be better for everyone and will bring certain harmful institutions and practices to their end or to their demise. I don't think I answered your question at all.
That's fair enough.
Okay. One more?
What do you think, Dr. Cornell?